Hi guys, I'm back. My last little hint at the video there was talking about our next project, a landscape. And a landscape is something that occurs outside, something that would have a horizon where the sky does touch the ground. And I had this really pretty cool third grade project for our upcoming school art night in May. And the students were working on some birch trees. So I know you might have seen this if you scour the internet like Mrs. Magana does, but it's a pretty effective and really cool way to make a very interesting piece of art. So again, things that you probably have. I also hinted in the last video segment about these kits that I have. If you are one of my Carrollton kids, I did set these outside my art room. That you could possibly pick up if you're allowed to get into the school. And I asked the Meyer lady this morning if she would donate some plastic bags for us. And so I just kind of threw in different items that I think you might have at home. But maybe if you're there, why not just pick it up so you've got some things to use. In this kit, which is why I'm holding it, two things that might help you out. One, I put some of these extra papers actually from the kids. So we talked about kind of a communicative or collective thing. So all their little scraps of paper, they didn't need much of this. They used later on without putting their name on. And so I had extras of these. So I thought, oh, why not? So I threw a little piece in each of your bags. If you don't have one, I'm gonna show you quickly how to make it. And really a cool technique I learned from really amazing person, Laura Lohman. And she has a little site called Painted Paper. She's out of Ohio and has like the really cool techniques to do different things with paper. With that piece I gave you, just now I was talking about, something else? Maybe cardboard. If you can't make it, you could even cut this little piece off. So before I get started, I don't have a quote. I'm gonna wait on that one for the next video, but I was talking the other day about Andy Warhol, my favorite artist. I love him, and he's actually behind me with the little puppet guy. I found a book that I had brought home about Andy and many other artists actually. So a couple cool things about Andy. This doesn't have much to do with the landscape, but a little tidbit for you for a little art history, because I love art history. Andy, artist in the 1980s is when he passed away, but he was creating in the 1960s and was very famous for his type of art called pop art, or popular in terms of the culture. Andy had some very iconic accessories or things that really made him stand out. You can actually see between this picture and the guy behind me, he had a wig. So he actually had a little challenge growing up. As a child, he was pretty sick. And so he didn't really have a lot of hair and then decided to wear a wig. So that was kind of a key thing about him. He did all those red glasses, as you can see in the picture, and he even wore these jackets, black jacket, as it hints in this photo here. He even had cats. And so my second graders, little shout out to you, we were talking a lot about Andy pretty recently, in fact. And Andy at any given time had almost 20 cats. And we laughed because we read this book on YouTube. You can totally find it, Uncle Andy's. And Andy had about, like it said, 25 cats named Sam. They were all named Sam. In this little tidbit of information over here, it talked about the fact that his paintings even smelled like cats. He had so many around. He also was very obsessed with being famous and wanted to get his art out to the masses and created things pretty easily with printing and printmaking. And so we're definitely going to dabble into that, even just a little bit right now. What we're going to do is a form of printing. So let's get started. All right, so I have white paper, okay? You can use copy paper, whatever you've got around, and you don't need much. You could do this whole sheet and kind of use it for different things if you'd like, but the birch trees for our project, we won't need much. The second thing I want you to get out is a little piece of cardboard. And oftentimes in the art room, I will cut these things and we use them all the time for weird printing things, scraping, applying things, and it's just a piece of cardboard. And so again, I was talking about, I had this extra box in my own house I brought to school and then ended up back at home here. and then a little bit of black paint, okay? Nothing special, but black will get you that color in a birch tree. So if you ever look outside, a birch tree has that white bark and then those lines, again, horizontal, left to right, that make it kind of really unique and special. I love birch tree bark. And when I show students a picture, a lot of times they'll say, I have one of those, or I've seen that. And so kind of cool that we can pinpoint that in our own real life. So, cardboard. You're going to dunk it in paint. And listen, you don't want a lot of paint on the end of this. It should not be dripping wet. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull it down from the top and really get to the top. When I had students do it, they started in the middle and then they wasted all this empty space. So as I pull it down, it's going to kind of make a drag. Oh, and that scratchy chalkboard sound I hate, but it works for this. We need it to work. And I sometimes even grab it back and pull it the other direction. Okay, so I've got this like really bizarre looking thing. The kids are always like, did I do this right? But actually, when you start to cut the tree, it looks wonderful. It really looks realistic, okay? So I'm gonna do another one, and then I'm gonna start to cut that piece I've already got. Sometimes they add back into this too, adding a little extra line or stamping designs. So a little bit of paint, by the way, goes a long way. You don't wanna coat this on your project, so you've got nothing but black, because if you look at that birch tree, there is an awful lot of white, okay? So if you've got this, it dries really fast, we can move on to the next part. So I will show you a couple of things before we start applying all of our goodies to our landscape. Number one, another art term, we talk a lot about line. Okay, so in a second here, we're going to have some lines that we need to make sure fit our page. We're talking vertical, which is up and down, horizontal, and I talked about how the sky touches the ground, and then we'll even have diagonal because of the branches, okay, on those birch trees. Another thing I wanted to hint at, I told you, I love art history, I love my artists, I love showing you different ideas and things and how they interpret things that we're doing. This artist in second grade of mine have actually talked about him. His name is Romir Bearden, and Romir Bearden used a lot of collage, okay, which is using multimedia, things like magazines, newspaper, paper, paint, and adding it all together into his imagery. And it makes it very interesting, right? Things can go in different directions. Things that you might think, whoa, this is someone's face, turns it into something in the background. They did a lot of different things this year with collage, like I had just hinted at. And I thought that it just sort of reminisced that same line texture in our painting, but just something I could show you, something you might have not known. I also, before we wanted to get done here with this landscape, wanted to show you a couple of my student works because they look really cool. This is for that Artome show, so take a peek at this one here. This is what we're gonna do with the birch tree, and then they stamped on leaves. So when I ideally started this project, I've seen it done with fall leaves, so you could stamp warm colors, red, orange, yellow, into your tree. I've seen it done in winter, which looks beautiful with the bare branches, but different colors in the snow. And then I thought, wait a minute, this is gonna be in a spring show. We're not doing winter, bye-bye. And so we stamped some greens and yellows and mixed those analogous colors that are next to each other in the color wheel, colors in our background. Here's another one. This student kind of blended a little bit more and has those like lollipop trees, but I loved it still. I like the 3. Artists love things in odd numbers. It creates a little bit more interest into your work of art. I've got this one. Just thought it was really fun. We added some glitter glue into it, so I don't know if you can tell it glistening, but that was really cute too. And then I had something, of course I love a student that does it a little bit differently. This one added flowers into those trees, but how fun for spring. Okay, again, this is for an art show, Artomay. They take these works of art and put frames around them for my students, and then they display them. So all my kids have an all-school art show. It's really neat, and it's very powerful. It's done in the gym in conjunction with our little art night. So I have a whole bunch of make and take activities, and so that just goes along with the show. Again, every student gets to display something, and so it's an all-school thing. It's only up for one night, which is kind of the catch. But they do get the painting back if they don't choose to actually buy it in the frame. Okay, so that's what we're going for. I started mine. I actually thought I had all this watercolor, and so I opened it today, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have blue. I used it all, and then yellow, but I remembered blue and yellow make green. And so I started to do a wash, okay, into the background. So again, we just talked about horizontal, right? Where is your bottom? Where is your base going to be? So I sort of drew in a little line with a pencil, and I started to work down from there, mixing with my paintbrush. So watercolor, but again, you could use acrylic or tempera paint, whatever you sort of have. If you don't have that, why not use crayon? You could totally make a background. And remember that other video I talked about with texture? That could look really fun if you put your paper on top of something and did a rubbing with either a green or even a blue. After I'm done painting here, I'm just going to pretend I'm sort of mixing in. I like to pay attention to the way that I am working my brush. So if I'm painting and I'm just kind of going nuts here, all over, back and down, up and forth, and I'm making up words now, but you know what I mean. If I go the different directions, it doesn't always look as crisp or clean. So kind of pay attention to that. The other thing I wanted to tell you is I sort of blended again, remember my Brewers theme, with the yellow and the green and the blue together, and so it makes this kind of hazy, fun effect. But you can do whatever you want. Remember, you're the artist. You're in control. Then I talked about my sky, the background. And so I ended up just using blue paint, and I'm pretending, by the way, that I painted the whole thing. I'm just sort of showing you what we're looking for, what we're going for, so you have kind of a goal or something in mind, okay? Background first. Actually, I was taught that in middle school, that you got to work up your background before you put in your foreground, what is in the front. It's hard to go backwards into doing that because you're going to mix up blue all over your trees. Okay? Birch trees. So I've got my paper. It is dried now, and I'm going to start to cut lines. We talked about lines. The way I like to cut my paper is if my cardboard, okay, listen here, goes this direction. Okay, so when I was scraping it, I'm going left to right again, horizontal. I want to cut it on the vertical. Okay, so I'm looking for my lines to basically go this way on my tree. The bark wraps around that direction. It's not going to be wrong if you do it the other way, but if you want it to kind of look realistic, that's my best advice to you. So here I go. I am cutting this, and I kind of play around with this then. I noticed I like to taper off the top. Tapering means you kind of go up to a point. And so I have mine going off the page, okay? Then I glue it down, and I glue that in the grass. And I could go off the page at the bottom too, which could look interesting. Something might be zoomed in, things that are closer to us, you know, appear larger than if they're far away. Then what I'm going to do next, after I glue that down, by the way, friend Elmer's glue, and we talked about ... not a lot. Funny story about my one son Renzo. He'll come on, I think, and do a little book story with me in the next project. But he came to school one night and couldn't figure out how to open this glue bottle. So it's something so silly. You know, when I was younger, this is what we had. We didn't really have glue sticks, to be honest. And now everyone uses the glue sticks, and they don't know how to open the glue. So it is lefty-loosey to open the top of this, and I always wipe it as I'm doing that because a lot of my students don't clean off the top, and they think that it's stuck, and it doesn't work. Well, Renzo came to school, and he opened the whole thing. Can't even do it stuck together, but opened the top, and it was spilling out. And there's a really cute children's story called Too Much Glue, and the boy's name is Maddie. And in the story, it does talk about this art teacher. And Maddie uses way too much glue. And they talk about glue drops, not glue puddles. And so again, ... not a lot. And so Renzo will often say, too much glue, Maddie, too much glue. So we've got to make sure you're not pooling up all that glue, especially wasting it, and you can't use it on another project. I'm noticing my tree kind of gets a little bit cut off here, and some students kind of went with that on their tree, or like I said earlier, I was sort of adding this tapering effect. So I just cut another little chunk and I place it on my tree. I'll hold it up here, where it sort of fits and works out, okay? The final thing I'm gonna do on my tree to make it and make the branches is cut these little tiny strips to make those shapes. Now, as I'm cutting, I notice a lot that this is like way too long, and so I just keep snipping them. It's sort of a play here to figure out what you like, what you don't like. But if you ever look at an actual tree, something like a birch tree, there are tons of branches. So more is better. It looks more realistic to have those. And I always talk about my young students when they are making branches to have things in a V or even a Y. Okay, this is my Y, sorry. My V and Y for that little end of the branch there. Okay, I think that makes sense too. Something cool, something you could add on that my third graders, we didn't necessarily have time to do yet, but I brought home a piece of charcoal. Now, some of you might have this, you probably don't at home, so I'm gonna show you a couple of ideas to get that shadow effect. As artists, we sometimes look at things, especially like a landscape, outside, okay? So we talk about light, and a lot of famous artists like Monet, Van Gogh a little bit too, were obsessed with light and how it played an effect on their paintings. And so in this one, my sky's very blue, so I could have added some white and things too, but I'm pretending as though my light is coming off from this direction. And as it's shining down, it's creating the shadow onto the ground. So what I did then is I took this charcoal and sort of rubbed it, and you don't want to be very exact, guys. You kind of want to be messy, but not crazy, because you got to get it directed on this one sort of diagonal area. And then I take my finger, and we always talk about 1 or 2 finger blends. Some of my students end up looking like monsters with chalk everywhere, which could be cool, but definitely not the effect we're going for. And as I'm blending this, I'm just kind of making this sort of shadow happen. I could even take it and sort of blend it up on the tree a little bit to give it a little bit darker effect as it works its way down to the ground. But a little cool addition here to your birch tree painting. Now, you can do many things with this. After I'm done, you know, who's to say you couldn't make a little picture frame for this and start adding different patterns or shapes or colored papers around here, or maybe you're just content with what you've got. So again, way back to the beginning, I did insert these little papers into your baggie here, but you did find a way to make your own. All right, well, thanks for watching my landscape. Again, my third graders at school had been making these, and so I thought it'd be kind of cool to just share it with all of you, and maybe even they can practice with their shadows on this one. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for many more videos. Good luck this week, and please try to have some fun, okay? Thank you.